Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Wormeck bringing you another episode of the Wormhole. This week we're going to be taking a look at Age of Wonders 3. Now, this is a 4X game brought to you by Triumph Studios. For those of you who are familiar with what 4X is, if you've played Civilization 5, it's basically that style of game. The 4Xs are Explore, Expand, Exterminate, and Exploit. Most of those being pretty self-explanatory. Explore, you're exploring around the map to do things. Expand, you're expanding an empire. Exterminate, you're destroying your opponents. And exploit is that you're collecting the resources and taking advantage of things around you to your best interest. This game can be best described as Civilization 5 meets Might and Magic, Heroes of Might and Magic. In particular, Heroes of Might and Magic's combat system and kind of the general map layout is a bit more similar to that than Civ, but it does have the Civilization empire building, and a lot of the UI is very similar as well. So we're going to go into a new random map to kind of show this off a little bit. I've played a good amount of the campaign and kind of messed around a little bit here and there, but nothing super crazy. I've played a couple of hours on this. The maps are very long, so we obviously won't be able to finish a full game. If you've ever played something like Civilization, you know that it's fairly lengthy. So I'm just going to jump into a 4-player game here. It's a medium map size. I'm going to be the only human against 3 AI on Squire difficulty, which is the easiest difficulty, mostly just because I just kind of want to show off the game a little bit here. Now, what's cool about this is that in most 4X games, you generally choose your leader. In this case, the leader is actually fairly important because you have a lot of spells. This game is a fantasy setting, so it's a 4X game set more in a fantastic land with elves and draconians and dwarves and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to actually customize a new hero because I don't want to use one of the pre-made ones. And each of these actually affects your starting abilities. Let's get off dwarf there, because dwarves. So yes, each class actually has its own special abilities as well as special units to it, which is very important. So you have the Dreadnought that specializes a lot in kind of more weapons and that kind of thing, like tanks and siege weapons. Rogue is all about stealth units and like things like assassins and poisons. Sorcerer, I actually haven't tried, but based on what I've seen, it's probably more based on summoning of things and more direct damage and magic, of course. Theocrat, I'm not too sure, but it seems like it's probably more political leaning. Probably, yeah, like it mentions they can heal, persuade, minister, and convert. And Warlord is more your martial kind of guy, and Archdruid has a lot of summoning and nature-based powers. I'm actually going to try a Sorcerer because I've been kind of eager to try that out. Then you have your race. So not only do you have class, spells, and units that you can get, you also have racial abilities and units. So each race has its own customizable units. They're generally more or less on par across each one. There are minor differences in the way that they work, but you do have some kind of unique units to that. So you got the High Elves, Human, Orcs, Goblins. Oh god, that is hideous. Look at that. Look at that face. What is that face? Dwarves, draconians, and that is it. There's also a couple of neutral races. There's things like fairies that you can meet. And let's go with goblins. Yeah, you know what? Let's go with Goblin. Goblin Sorcerer. And then you have a number of specializations that you can take, so let's remove all of these and we'll choose our own. So, Air, Earth, Fire, Water, Creation, Destruction Adept, Expander, and Explorer are my options. Now, this does have an alignment system, so Creation is good aligned, Destruction is evil aligned. I want Destruction, because I'm a Sorcerer. Sorcerer Supreme, come on. Gotta do that. And Fire. Destruction and Fire. Master of Fire. I do like Master of Fire. Alright, so very offensive oriented kind of thing. You got a lot of hero customization here. I'm not gonna do a whole lot with this. Randomize the look. Yeah. It's gonna be that. You shall be Call. Kobold. Sudden. That's a bit of an in-joke. It's not important. And let's go done. So Obviously with Random World, it is a fully randomized world. So I'm not too sure exactly how well this will start out, but immediately you can kind of see this does look quite a bit like Civilization. If you ever played that, you do have your city, you've got your city borders around it, you have little resources inside here. As long as the resources are inside of your city's influence zone, you'll be getting bonuses from it. So I'm getting this bonus from this gold mine already, and that's it. You have different types of terrain that do different things, and you can get spells that alter the terrain type as well, which is pretty cool. I kind of like that feature. So if you've got like draconians and they really like it to be hot, you can actually terraform using magic. So let's start out by researching a skill. Again, this very similar to Civ. You got your kind of different things to do on the side. So these are my current abilities that I can research. One of the faults right away with the game is that there's not really an obvious tech tree to this. There's nothing to really indicate what's coming kind of next. It does tell you if you go over it. It tells you unlocks research, advanced seafaring, great, but there's nothing to say if there's something further than that. So I can get sorcery, which gives me additional spellcasting points to cast more spells per turn. So that's what this is up here. You have two types of spellcasting resources. You've got your mana, which is this. It's your global spellcasting resource. And then you have this, which is your spellcasting points. That limits how many spells you can cast in a given turn, whereas your mana is your overall spell pool. So you can actually use really big spells on your turns frequently, and as long as you have the mana income for it, it's fine. So you can get summoned units, like I could summon a wisp, which I don't really want. Invoke extraordinary mount. Summons a random egg that contains a mount. Okay. Arcane study. Magic fist. Yep, I think Call is going to fist people. I said it. Alright, so what did I start with here? I've got Raspic the Rotten. I apparently have an Archdruid guy as well. Where's my actual guy? Okay, here's my main unit. So each army is composed of up to 6 units. Unlike something like Might and Magic, it doesn't stack units. Might and Magic has got the concept of having, for example, you could have this Blight Doctor, you could have 40,000 of them in an army, and your army would be gigantic, but you still only on the map have one unit unless you split them, and let's not deal with that. It's more complicated than it needs to be, but you could have much larger armies. This, it does limit you to 6. What it does do is it rewards you for doing strategic placement of your troops by allowing you to surround an enemy. So this up here is actually an enemy, so I could actually go for that. But let's just move these guys together here to stack them up. Sure, let's take the Archdruid. Get in there. There you go. So now they're in a stack together. And if I send them up to here, and then I send Call up to here as well, so now they're in a map position right next to the enemy. So if I attack, you can see here that this is the enemy's units, this is my units. You could actually surround a unit completely and go at them with a gigantic army. It's really cool, and it works really great in something like siege fights, and the positioning of where they're standing actually influences where they are in the fight. So if I had my guys here and the other units were up here, the enemy would actually have to split themselves, and some would go this way, some would go that way to kind of deal with both threats. So in something like a siege fight that's really powerful, where you can have units all around an enemy city and kind of siege it down, it really gives you a feeling that you actually are sieging the fight, and it rewards you for kind of doing a more tactical organization for your things. So let's just jump into this combat here. The combat is kind of the most interesting thing for me. I really enjoy the combat system. I really liked it in Might and Magic, and this game is very similar to that. So it does have things like defensive bonuses for being behind cover, hiding behind things. Ranged units actually need line of sight. One thing that is probably going to become pretty obvious soon, if all these go after those guys, is that units are very, very squishy. You can lose your units very easily in this game, which is actually one of my kind of complaints with it, is the difficulty is really high in this game. It may not seem it all the time, but if you place your units in the wrong location, they can get ganged up on and just destroyed. And they've got this kind of thing where it's kind of interesting here. Like if I select my Goblin Untouchables, which are a ranged unit apparently. I have never played Goblins before, so forgive me if I seem like I don't really know what the units do. You can see that this is all the radius that they can move in. And the colors represent a few different things. So first of all, being that each unit has 3 kind of action points in a way. They also have movement, which works a little bit differently. The movement points that they have essentially affects how big each radius is for these action points. So if I move within the green, I can still attack 3 times. If I move in yellow, I can attack 2 times. Move into the orange, I can attack 1 time. So it limits how much you can actually do. If you go into the purple is just for escaping the fight. So if you go into these little arrow areas, that lets your unit flee from the fight. One of my complaints is that you can't actually see your attack radius. So there's no way for me to, for example, hover over this or click it or anything. It doesn't tell me what my attack range is. Unless that's what this is, actually. Oh, look at that. That's probably what that is. Well, I just learned something. That's actually something I've been complaining about since I started playing this, and now I look dumb. So there you go. So now I'm in range, and I can attack. And as you can see here, you get bonuses and penalties depending on different situations. So this unit is actually weak to Blight, which is the attack damage that I am doing with my goblins here. As you can see, it does 3. The poison cloud thing is Blight damage. They've got a line of sight penalty because they're behind all kinds of rocks, range penalty because they're pretty far away, and wind ward, which I don't really know what that is exactly, but I'm assuming it's probably because of this giant swirly rock crystal thing, or maybe just because they're fey. So in this case, I'm going to be shooting at them, should be twice, and this kind of brings up another thing that I have issues with. You can actually switch between your things here, and if you're doing something like ranged, you actually have to right click on everything, whereas I always tend to get into the habit of left click and then thinking I can just left click on the unit, but that does nothing. It actually just selects the wisps. So I'm not kind of too crazy about that. It looks, by the way, actually that poison spit does not actually allow you to attack multiple times. It usually actually would say on the skill attacks 1 to 3 times if you can. So I've got Marauders, which are just a straight melee unit, so they won't be able to actually get far enough to really do much to help out here. But I can actually have them charge up pretty far since they aren't going to be able to do much else. And then I can just put them into defensive position, which boosts their armor. So this guy won't be able to get into range to really do a whole lot to help out here either, unfortunately, I don't think. See, again, this is kind of what I was talking about with the range too, is even with this, I can see, okay, great, I can attack here if I don't move. But I can't see, like, if I move to here, how far can I hit? If I go to here, are they in range? Do I have to go to here? What about here? Like, there's not enough kind of feedback, in my opinion, to kind of allow me to do kind of informed decisions on what exactly is kind of going on. See, like, now he's in range. There was no way I could have really known that he was in range other than doing the square by square movement until I see that, oh, he's about to get inside the circles, and then I can hit him. So that's something that kind of bothers me a little bit. But it's not really the end of the world. You kind of get used to it as you're playing through anyway. Goblin untouchable. So I've got lots of these goblin spitter guys. Let's get a couple more guys over here. So since in this case they don't attack, it doesn't matter how far they've moved, it's actually fine for me to move them further. Now, your hero, being a hero, is actually quite powerful. You've got a number of special abilities for them. So I've got melee strike, I can guard, of course, I can do a spell, and then I have shock bolts. So it does 1 damage. This is where, as you can see in the description, can trigger up to 3 times. That's where the positioning and the amount of action points you've used kind of matters a little bit more. And arcing shot means that it will be able to go over some obstacles to avoid getting messed up by as many of the movement penalties. Now, spells you can do no matter how much you've moved, so I'm actually just going to try and move over here to help out my other units. And then we're going to use the spell. So I've got Fireball currently and Static Sphere. So Static Sphere shields a friendly unit, and every time an enemy unit performs a melee attack against the unit receives 5 damage and has a chance to be stunned. That's pretty cool. But I gotta go with Fireball, because Fireball. Now, the game doesn't bound the borders of the screen very well, so I can actually, like, I can't scroll to the right because it just goes to my other monitor here. It's fine on the sides where it is, but it's kind of annoying here. Like, I can sort of do it because my monitor is staggered on the sides, but I actually end up having to use the arrow keys a lot to control this, which is really not how I would want to do this. Spells can hit anywhere on the map though, so that's kind of nice. Protected against physical, so I'm just going to nuke one of these guys here. one thing actually that is important with your action points is if you still have action points left, that actually affects how you can counterattack. That's one thing that is really finicky with this game, and that's the leading cause of me losing my units for the most part. Because if you move a unit and you finish with action points left, and then an enemy attacks you in melee, you will actually counterattack. You'll retaliate against them. And you can retaliate up to a number of action points that you have. So, for example, when I end my turn here, my guys will have action points left. If this guy comes and melees them, they will attack back. However, when their turn comes back around, they don't get those action points back again. So if they counterattack 3 times, I can do nothing with that unit. It's a sitting duck. So if you accidentally overextend and get a unit stuck like up here and everything's wailing on it, there's nothing you can do. That unit is stuck there. You have to use other units to get in and save it, which is kind of cool, I have to say. I like the idea of the units actually kind of holding their own a little bit, so to speak. But then I also have these issues where weakening touch, where you end up kind of accidentally moving a unit to somewhere that you didn't think someone could get it, and it just kind of kicks your face in. I don't really like that very much. I don't know what's the bigger threat, so I'm just going to move over here. Alright, Raspic the Rotten. So each of your heroes can actually do their own spells. So I can actually have Raspic here use combat spells, but I don't have enough. What don't I have enough of? Oh, I can only cast 1 spell per round. My mistake. So I could have used him to cast a spell instead of using Call, but let's be honest, fireballs are too freaking awesome. Now, Raspic here does actually have a ranged attack, so I could trigger his ranged attack instead of his melee attack. His ranged attack only does 1 damage, but it can trigger up to 3 times. So it does prevent retaliation, which is kind of nice. I don't really know if I want to melee. If I go to here and melee, I'll actually get 2 attacks, which is pretty good. I just noticed this one's actually a stronger one. Is it? No, it's not. It's the same. So it will also counterattack me twice, which is a little bit unfortunate. There's also a bonus for flanking enemies. If I was to, for example, go around to here, which I won't, I could flank this guy, and he'll have to waste 1 action point to turn and face me before he can counterattack. So essentially he would only get 1 counter instead, which is pretty powerful. Now, why wouldn't I go there and do that? Well, first of all, I'll use more action points, but also, as you can see along the way, just to the left of where my cursor is, you've got a number of little red triangles. That shows where you'll get attacks of opportunity against you, which is a concept you might be familiar with if you've ever played something like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, which are tabletop role-playing games. That basically is that if the unit is in one of those squares and tries to move out of it, you will get counterattacked. So they'll get a free smack against you, which in this case 3 attacks against me is a pretty bad trade-off for not getting hit once. So I'm just going to actually move and beat it in the face, and I did the thing that I keep accidentally doing, which is left click instead of right click. I don't know why I always do that, but I do. Poke. Poke. And you get the little flags here, show you the amount of health that they have remaining. You can actually zoom in pretty close too. The models are actually very nicely detailed. There's a lot of nice detailing. You got the little feathers on the bird and stuff. My little goblin guys. These guys over here are pretty sweet. They've put a lot of attention to detail into these little tiny models that most of the time you're zoomed out to like back here and you don't really see a lot of. But I really appreciate that you can see that. It's kind of nice. Now, because he's in the green, he'll only have to move 1 square, so he can attack 3 times, so this should actually kill the enemy, which is pretty good. And it only gets to counterattack once because Raspic the Rotten absorbed the rest of the hits from it. So that's all my guys moved, so end my turn and let them go. Ow. So I got 1 counterattack and almost killed my hero. If your heroes die, they do get to respawn, but while they're defeated, especially if it's your faction leader, while your faction leader is defeated, your empire is in chaos. Your units stop producing, your income is drastically reduced, morale shoots to the floor. It's pretty awful. You pretty much want to keep your leader alive as much as possible, which, I mean, shouldn't really come as a huge surprise, but it is the case. So, let's poke some fairies. Actually, let's not poke fairies, and let's instead hit them with poison, because because this will kill them as well, and I won't get counterattacked. Now your units do also level up, which you can't see in combat, or can you? Yes, you can. So here you go. So this is their experience, and as you can see, as they kill things and get XP, they will level up and get bonuses. So it's extra damage, more hit points, resistances, and that kind of thing. So it's pretty cool, very powerful, and it encourages you to make sure that your units stay alive throughout a campaign. The longer a unit's alive, obviously the more effective they're going to get. The catch is it's very hard to keep units alive because, as I mentioned earlier, they are quite squishy. So it's very important that you micromanage things and pay attention to what you're doing exactly. And each unit does also have all these different bonuses and penalties and things. Like right now I've got Wind Ward, so I can actually check what that is because that's a map thing. So ranged attacks have a great weakness. Okay, so their ranged attack might actually be considerably better than this. Maybe not though, it's hard to tell. They can tunnel. They can do noxious vulnerability, so I guess they can, when they hit things, they can make things poisoned kind of. They're irregulars, which actually is important. That means that they're not a typical kind of unit. They have something special about them, so that's probably why they're tunneling units. They're goblins, which affects certain things, cave crawling, night vision, and wetland walking. So they don't take as much penalties during the night. Some units do. Alright, let's let Call finish this off. Poke. So that's kind of a quick look at the combat. Now, I really like that combat. It's very in-depth. There's a lot of things kind of going on, so I've explored the nodes so I get some little bonuses and stuff. That's already explored as well. Can I make it over to the chest? No, of course not. Does he have movement still? Yes. Now, right now I'm not getting any direct income from this, but I've explored it. So when the first time you visit a place, if it hasn't been visited before, I should actually have him go there. If you visit something for the first time, it'll become explored. As you can see now, it says air node explored, income plus 10. The income plus 10 only matters if it's within your city boundaries, but the explored or unexplored is important because the first time that you visit a place, you'll actually get something for it. So it could just be something like I just got there, I got a bunch of bonus mana. It could be some kind of units. This, for example, when you explore it, you get a free city upgrade to my closest city. So that builds a structure automatically for you. So let's take a look at my city here. Similar to something like Civilization, you can produce units, structures. You have a number of city options, so you can raise or plunder the city, which generally you probably don't want to do to your capital city, because then you don't have a city, and I'm pretty sure that makes you lose. And you can do details for your city. So by default, you have a throne city. That's where your leader will actually respawn to if you die. And you can see a couple different details there. So these are the units I can currently build: the Swarm Darter, Marauder, Untouchable, and Battering Ram. And you have a couple different structures as well. So similar to something like Civilization, there's a couple things that you can build that just give you kind of bonuses each turn, but don't really benefit too much. And you have to manage things like the amount of quote-unquote hammers, similar to Civilization once again. So right now this city has 25 production income, so that determines how quickly structures can be built, how fast units are produced. You've got population, which affects a couple different things, like how quickly your city borders grow. You have knowledge income, which affects how quickly you research things. Mana income, which of course is how fast you generate mana, and gold income, which is pretty obvious, it's how fast you generate gold. So in the sake of being efficient, the best thing for me probably early on would be to get the Builder's Hall. That'll let me build other things more quickly. And the arena can be really good as well, but it's variable since it depends on how much you actually produce units at that city. Since for right now I have a pretty decent starting army, I'm going to go ahead and get the Builder's Hall. And this is, again, you left click something and it doesn't just build it right away. You either have to click produce, double click it, or you can just if you right click, it'll open the Tome of Wonders, as they call it, which is very similar to the Civilization Civpedia. It essentially just gives you all of the information on everything. This unfortunately kind of replaces a tutorial, which is another one of my major faults with the game. There's a lot of depth to this game, a lot of details, a lot of things, and they don't really explain any of it. If you've never played something like Civilization or Might and Magic for the combat system, you will risk being very lost in this game. You'll be likely just kind of sitting here reading these pretty often. One thing that is nice, at least, is it does kind of give you a little bit of details, and it links you directly to things. So anything with blue text, be it in dialogues from NPCs or something you've clicked on elsewhere, even within the Tome of Wonders itself, you can click on those and follow the little hyperlinks to different things. So that's definitely at least nice, but in my mind it doesn't really replace a straight tutorial. They kind of have something like that in the first campaign that they give you, where they kind of introduce some very basic things, but they don't really tell you how to do things. They just give you an objective of do this thing, and then they leave you to figure it out on your own, which some people will really like, but in my opinion this game has so much going on that it will be extremely overwhelming for someone that's not already somewhat familiar with how things work in this style of game. So let's go ahead and get the Builder's Hall going. Now you can also queue up to 5 things, and you can just set it to infinitely keep making things. So if you have a certain unit and you just want to keep pumping out units and sending them to their doom, you can definitely do that, and that's very goblin of you, in fact. So my quest right now is to defeat my rivals, and I can maintain alliances. So if I make an ally with someone, then I will be good for that, and that's it for my turn right now. Hey guys, sorry about that. I apparently ran out of hard drive space in the middle of recording. But we're back, so just going to explain a couple more quick things for you here, and then we'll call it out. So down the bottom left here, you can see that there's the number of turns left remaining and what you're currently researching. You've got your current alignment. You've got your diplomacy screen over here, which kind of lets you civilization style interact with the other leaders. I don't know anyone yet in the server here, so obviously you don't really have much of a choice. And then you have your Empire Happiness, which gives you a general idea of what's going on. In addition to that, you do have all the different unit details here. I also just found a new item, so I've got a Thief's Cowl. This lightning wand that I have here is actually what lets me use a ranged attack in the middle of combat. This is not a base ability of my hero. If I lose this item, I will actually lose that. And as you level up, which you can see up on the top here, you get to kind of improve your heroes. Especially your heroes you get to customize as they level, so you get hero points per level, which you can then spend on these. So you get a number of points, and this is the cost for each individual thing, so you can kind of distribute your stuff as you want. And you know, you could get all things get a that's spell resistance. You can steal enchantments, which is a special ability you'll be able to activate, dispelling magic, resistance to certain damage types, bonus range damage, generic kind of stats, and these things lead to other things as you purchase them, so it kind of unlocks further stuff and lets you further customize yourself as you go along. So it's pretty cool. I'm very much enjoying this so far. It's very in-depth. It basically combines 2 strategy games that I very much enjoy, and that was one of my major complaints with something like Civilization, was the combat system was just not engaging enough, and this kind of satisfies that need for me. I've really always enjoyed the Might and Magic combat system. I think it's a very good system, and there's a lot of neat stuff that you can do with that. And this kind of allows me to do that in a very neat micromanagement kind of oriented game. So I think you should definitely check it out. And this is actually the size of the map right now. I do like that it goes to this kind of like hand-drawn style. As you zoom out, it actually looks like you're looking at a map rather than just like a display. And it's cool. Because this is all randomly generated, obviously it's got procedurally generated for this map as well, depending on the type of terrain that's there. So there you go. So that's our look at Age of Wonders 3. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, definitely take a look at the other videos on my channel. Like, comment, and subscribe if you feel so. And I'm definitely looking forward to playing some more of this game, so hopefully you guys check it out as well, and maybe we'll bump into each other online sometime. So until then, it's Wormeck heading out. You have a number of different paths to go along with your classes. So you have your class, obviously, as you do in pretty much every MMO or a lot of RPGs. And your class basically determines some of your basic skills that you have, but it doesn't actually give you everything. You also have a path, which gives you more dedicated content to the type of play that you actually enjoy.